We got a lot of dapim to study.
Oh boy,
I put a few more in the chat.
That's a great introduction, Rachel, to some important issues that we're looking at. I'm going to cover a little bit. Ein Chet was 78 was last Thursday, but we'll move on from that. But that's the beginning of the 8th chapter, Ha'isha Shenaflu La Nechasim, and we're not dealing with shtuyot, we're not dealing with foolishness, we're dealing with empowered women. A lot of this tractate is helping women, Ketubah in itself is just really protecting women, protecting let's face it, and certainly in those days and probably till today, a weaker class. And you look at divorce and issues, in general, women end up on the short end of these relationships, unless they're happily married and everything. But even, so this chapter and chapter 9, the next one that we'll come into, Hakotav L'Ishto, really deals with empowered women, with women that have their own assets, their own nechasim. When do they get it? Do they get it when they're married, before they're married, when they're engaged, before, they're after? A lot of discussion about that. But really, a lot of these next dapim, the 7 dapim that we'll look at, are really about empowering, dealing with, thank God, empowered women and how to protect the wife's property, even when she's married. So it's not a slave relationship. It's as much as, with Kiddushin, we saw that, you're, kind of, you're buying a woman kind of thing. Not really. This woman has her rights in this relationship. But it's balancing that in a society that where the men, if it seems that Chazal, you want to let these women get married, and in that society, and feel free to chime in the chat and yell and scream at me. In that society, I think the rabbis want to make sure that the men feel empowered also. I'm a libertarian, so a lot of them I feel like if men, if we don't need men in this world, okay, then whatever, it'll happen. I hope men can prove themselves that we are worthy of existing over the next century and centuries and millennia. But Chazal seem to, are a little worried about the men, and the women kind of in that society certainly needed the men to marry them. And so they needed to give something for the men to balance out when there's an empowered woman. But I love some of the powerful women here. So right on 78, Ein Chet Amud Bet on the bottom, and it goes to Ein Tet on the top. It's a woman that does not want her husband to get all of the property. So Hahi Itata, so a woman who debaya to barchinu lenichsa migavra, she wanted to protect her assets from her husband in case her husband divorces her. And we have all sorts of issues that will come up later with the inheritors of the husband, his children, even her own children. So she writes a ketubah to her daughter, but she doesn't really want the daughter to have it. She gives over all her assets to the daughter so that the woman herself has those assets. And then, but she divorces her husband, or the husband divorces her, they get divorced. And the woman, the ex-wife, expects to get all of her assets back. And the daughter has the document that says, no, you gave the assets to me. I love this rich family dynamic. It reminds me of Leona Helmsley of blessed memory, and her fights with the kids and the daughter and this and that, and fights for her Helmsley's fortune and all that. But what's so interesting is Rav Nachman Kareh, So Rav Nachman, so the daughter says, no, I got all the assets from my mother. She gave them to me. And Rabbi Nachman rips it up. He protects the wife versus the daughter and the husband. Mar Ukva finds this scandalous. So he says, to Rav Anan, what did you see what Rav Nachman did? And Mar Ukva asked the question. He said, I would have done the same thing. So, there's some parts, we had it in Yevamot. They're like the depths of primitivity, of being primitive, sometimes what we're learning. Oh, I hope I didn't get frozen. Rachel, can you hear me?
You're not frozen from my perspective.
Okay, good.
Folks, not if you can hear Rabbi Lopatin, please. Yeah,
okay, good. Somehow people got frozen. Okay, so because I talked about how primitive sometimes the Talmud is, Rachel, just text me if God forbid we get cut off. Sometimes it seems it's so primitive, and then sometimes the rabbis are just.
Okay, now it's frozen for me. Or is it frozen for other people too? Yes. Now we have he seemed to know it was coming, didn't he? All right. I'm going to text him and let him know. I guess the internet might be unstable. Rabbi Lopatin, if you can hear us, I'm going to text you now. Please, in the meanwhile, in the chat, tell me which was your favorite of the gematrias. Please let us know. All right. Okay. 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 Jenny, you can hear me. Yes, I'm my Jewish learning. Rachel, I'm my Jewish learning. But I'm not the one teaching the class. All right, let's see if we can get him back. Let's see. Rabbi Patton, are you there?
Okay, can you see me?
Yay!
Yay! I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened. Never. I'll blame the storm or something.
You seem to know it was going to happen. You're in Cleveland.
Don't say that. My son will kill me. I'm in Detroit.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
There's a difference.
Okay.
My bad.
Great.
Yes. East Coaster here.
East Coaster. Yeah. Okay. So
you're not in Florida.
So I was saying that sometimes it seems Chazal, we read about child marriage and all that. It seems so primitive. But then sometimes it's amazing how empowering Chazal, how sensitive they are and how ahead of their times they are. And this is really a prenuptial agreement. This is a prenuptial agreement that it's harotzeh shetavriach nechasei mibayla ketzad hi osa harotzah. If a woman wants to guarantee her property that she has coming in, what does she do? And that's a prenuptial agreement. So I'm kind of excited that something, again, there's this spectrum in the Talmud from things that are so contemporary that resonate with us, let's say that, and then things that seem so behind. But it's interesting that there's a balance also that we have to let the husband get some elements. So if a woman comes in with karka, with property, with land, the husband doesn't get all that land, but the husband does get, and this is all over the Talmud, peyrot. the husband does get the profits from that. If a woman comes in with a factory, the husband will get some of the profits from that factory, but he doesn't own the factory. And then the great question is, let's say someone steals something that property the woman came in with, and there's a penalty to pay double if you steal, or 4 and 5 if it's an animal, 4 times. Who does that go to? Who does that profit go to? So on 79.2, it says it goes to the woman. So on 80, there's an idea of achila derech kavod, a beautiful way of the husband and wife really need to act with honor with each other, so kavod, and that's sort of the balance that our rabbis are trying to find in this. So even they make changes if someone, now this is not so enlightened, marrying a young girl, but the idea was probably families wanted to make sure that their daughter would have a place, would get married maybe, and so they would marry off their young girls. And when the young girl became 12, became a bogeret, she could refuse. She could say, I don't want this relationship. She can get out of it. But they wanted to make sure that the husband had some rights to her property, so he wouldn't be afraid that I'm not going to give her anything because she's going to want to get out of this relationship. So again, there's sort of this balance. And on Pei Amud Bet on 80 side B talks a lot about the sharecropping and percentage that you have to give, and again done with dignity. Then comes to a really sad, kind of a sad couple of sides. 80B, 81A, like a woman dies, and actually this is, let's say her husband dies, and the brother is supposed to do the levirate marriage, Masechet Yevamot, we know that well, and then she dies. Who is responsible to bury this woman? Is it the inheritors of her first husband? Is it the man she was supposed to marry, the brother, their inheritors, the father, all that? And so it's really, on the one hand, it's kind of sad. Like, why is there a discussion about this? But on the other hand, who's going to pay the funeral home, and who's going to be maybe put it the other way, who is in charge of this funeral? And that's an important issue. Who is in charge of burying the woman with dignity? But then you have cases of really interesting, and there's, in the middle of all this technical stuff, there is like emotion. You can just feel the emotion be underneath the dapim, the pages. A woman is a sota woman, meaning that her husband suspected her of fooling around, and she was alone with a man, and he warned her, "Don't be alone with that man," and he's afraid of that. And what he does is he says, "Okay, you were alone with this man. I'm gonna take you down to the temple, and you're gonna have to drink from this sota water that God's name was erased in." But in the middle of all this, the husband dies. So does she get her ketubah? Perfectly married couple. We know there are always these cases, like a couple, not always, you read about cases, the couple's on the verge of divorce, and the husband dies or the wife dies, and the other side gets all the money because they haven't finalized the divorce yet. We're not talking about any wrongdoing here. It's just that this is like they're on the verge. So there's a whole question of notelik tubata. The husband died. She was about to drink from the sota water, but she didn't drink it. Does she get or not? And then Beit Hillel says, so Beit Shammai says, you know what? They're still married. Lucky woman. She didn't have to drink from the sota water. Good for her. Didn't have to take any risk because if she was guilty, theoretically, she explodes from that water. So no, some people get lucky. Her husband died, and she gets the ketubah, the value of the ketubah. Beit Hillel says, no. Either she drinks the water, and and maybe she was not guilty, and that's fine, and then her husband dies, and then she gets the ketubah, or she doesn't get the ketubah. It's this middle case. So Beit Hillel is a little bit more sensitive, maybe, to the emotions going on here. And on 81b, there's more talk about avoiding hatred between a husband and wife, and really the idea that sometimes when you separate finances, Rashi says, "Hamiyachel lishto or karka or metaltalin." If you separate, and the husband says, this is dedicated to your ketubah, meaning if we get divorced, you'll get your ketubah, and it's going to be from this particular field or this factory or my Tesla. My Tesla worth $100,000, not one that I own, but let's say worth $100,000 is going to guarantee your ketubah, $100,000. So what the Gemara says is, don't do that. Like, don't say, there's your ketubah, look at that Tesla, because notain evat olam beinehen, because that creates hatred, and everyone's looking at it and says, he's designated specifically what the ketubah is going to be. That means a nav notain begerushin. That means he's looking forward to getting a divorce because he's already decided which assets are going towards her ketubah that I'll have to pay. So the nice thing, the minhag, is actually that we are, the custom is like when we're married, when husband and wife are married, they kind of share finances. I'm not suggesting how you want to do it, but if you're married, but there is sort of a little bit of an issue with making it so explicit that this particular thing is going to be for the ketubah, because we really want the marriage relation to be a loving relationship. And 82a gets just an interesting story that a woman was the brother. She's supposed to be a yavama to marry the brother, levirate marriage. The brother dies, and she thinks she's going to get assets from him because she was destined to marry him. And his family doesn't want that, so they bring a get. They say, no, she is divorced from the brother, so she doesn't have the law of yibum or anything like that. But the woman says, let's split the difference. So they say, well, you're going to cheat us. So it's a very, oh my gosh, we get into it's money things, but it's real emotions with people. 82b gets to the heart of what the ketubah is all about, this guarantee, and that is shelo tehei kala beinav l'hotzi'ah. The whole thing of the reason for the ketubah, and that it guarantees a certain amount of money. Still discussion of how much money a ketubah is worth. Maybe $100,000, maybe enough to start a business, something to allow the woman to be an independent entity if the husband dies or she gets divorced. It's to make sure that the husband doesn't just marry a woman and divorce her. He knows he's got to pay that ketubah. So, not going to do anything willy-nilly. And 83a then swings back to the empowered woman. And we started with Aisha Shanaflu. The chapter 8 was when she had all those nechasim, but in 83 it talks about a woman who says, you know what, my dear husband, I don't want your support. I don't need your writing me checks or giving me an allowance for food. But that means that the money that I make from my salary goes to me. It doesn't go to you, because normally she can say, I'll work, I'll take care of the house, but I need you to sustain me. But if she wants to give that up, she can. And this, came up with a Welch from General Electric, from GE. I think his ex-wife got like billions and billions of dollars because she was working for him. She, entertained and was the wonderful Rebbitzin, as it were, for the CEO. So the court said, she was working for him. She has a right to his fortune. And it's a little different. In this case, we're not talking about divorce, but we're talking about a woman who is earning for her husband, but she is empowered. She can choose not to, that she works on her own and makes the money for herself, and the husband doesn't have to support her. So it's a real calculation for a woman, how much she wants to work and how much she feels her value is. And I think it's so, but the Chazal are very sensitive that while they're excited, it seems that there are wealthy women. They want to protect women's independence, even when they're married, but they also want to make sure that they're able to get married, that the man feels that he's somewhat empowered. Rush. So I love this 84a in the Mishnah. A real interesting disagreement between Rabbi Tarfon and Rabbi Akiva. So a guy dies. Sorry, sad, it happens. And he has his wife who has claims to his assets, at least the ketubah, whatever, $100,000. But he's indebted. He has someone who he owes money to. And then he has kids who need money. And the only asset he has is, let's say, okay, he was lending the Tesla, let's use that, 100,000 to someone. So ayalo pikadon umalva bi'aracherim. So there is some asset to this guy, but who is going to get it? The wife wants her ketubah. The poor people that he's owes money to need to be paid. And his poor kids, they're depending on this to send their kids to college or something. So Rabbi Tarfon is so sweet. We love Rabbi Tarfon. Nula koshel shabahen. He says, give it to the weakest, the one who needs it the most. Like maybe the wife has been earning billions of dollars. She doesn't need that. And maybe the kids don't need it. And maybe the lenders, like big banks, I don't offend any bankers here, but so Rabbi Tarfon says, give it to the most needy. Rabbi Akiva says, Rabbi Akiva, the greatest rabbi ever, great, but on the other hand, he was a zealot. Rabbi Akiva says, Ein merachamim badin. We don't show mercy in when it comes to justice. So he says and he finds that the Yoshim get the assets. And then there's a whole discussion on 84b about how powerful Rabbi Akiva is. We're like intimidated by him. And Asita Divrei Rabbi Akiva kahalacha l'Moshe miSinai. We say, wow, Rabbi Akiva, you made it like Rabbi Akiva, you're so important. You made him like getting Torah from Sinai, whatever Rabbi Akiva says. And then there's a halacha Rabbi Akiva michavero. Rabbi Akiva, but we say Rabbi Akiva is not everything, and yet he's powerful. So we have to work on that. But it sort of really, on the one hand, it encapsulates Masechet Ketubot, really. That on the one hand, we're dealing with very technical things and money and power, and on the other hand, we want to deal with things in a very sensitive way, and that there are emotions that underlie this, whether it's a woman who dies, who buries her, whether it's a woman who wants to be married, and this, I'm a guy, but I imagine women go through this a lot, and maybe everyone does, that we want people to feel around us, sometimes to feel empowered. And if they don't feel empowered, then we suffer sometimes. Maybe it's also the professional lay relationship. You can look at it this way. So the Chachamim are very sensitive to this. There's so on 85, today's Daf, there are lots of stories of women demanding inheritance versus the heirs, meaning the husband dies and the woman says, I want what is coming to me. And the kids say, no, we want what's coming to us. And a lot of times this is not necessarily her children. It could be the husband's children that are stepchildren. And, if you know any cases where the stepmother involved and there's always tension between, we're the children and then the stepmother wants this and this is this beautiful thing that was my father's. It's really lots of emotions here. So the next few dapim coming up deals with more women's dependency on mizonot, on how much food and sustenance really they can get and how to deal with that fairly. So I'm going to leave that for all of you to go through and for the next summarizer to come up with sort of pulling that all together. But there are a lot of pages coming up where we're concerned for more vulnerable women, whereas in this group of 7 dapim, we're really focused on powerful women. How do we allow them to maintain that power while giving some sort of balance to relationships?
Thank you, Rabbi Lopatin, for as always. Oh, you look frozen to me. Can you hear me?
Oh, no, I can hear you.
Okay, you're still here. Thank you for, as always, giving us a lesson that somehow combines speed and clarity and heart and intelligence all in one package in 30 minutes. We really appreciate it. And it's a pleasure learning from you and with all of you. And mazel tov to all on this milestone of 999 days of Talmud, which makes us a little more than a third of the way through. And we'll see you all tomorrow in your inbox.
Great. Shana Tova, everyone. Thanks so much, Dr. Rachel. And keep learning in the new year.
Shana Tova, everybody.
Shana Tova.
Bye.
Bye-bye.